Hi everyone, welcome to Sculpt Mode. I'm Danto, and in this video we'll be blocking out a stylized male character in Nomad Sculpt. And first of all, I'm going to be using a sphere, duplicating the sphere into 8 segments, then from there shaping it into forming the character. This video was actually suggested by one of my subscribers in my previous video that I should do a step-by-step video on how to sculpt or block out a character in Nomad Sculpt. So I had to speed up this video a little bit so that it will save time and be more comfortable for you guys to watch. So from there, I start by reducing the multi-resolution of this sphere, and this sphere right now we'll be using it to block out the rib cage. So now we'll just focus on shaping this. Then this, I'm going to just move it right about to the front right here using the gizmo. And one thing you need to pay attention to is the body proportions. When you look at a male character and a female character, there are so many things that comes into your mind, and there are so many things that you need to pay attention to in order to get a good proportion of the body. And first thing that you need to know is the body mass. Now, the male character has a more broader shoulder and broader rib cage than the female character. That is one of the anatomy structure. So because we are doing a male character, we'll make the rib cage to be bigger than the pelvis. So this right now I'm shaping is the pelvis, and the pelvis, I don't want to make it so big because when it's too big, it looks more like a female character. You can try that and you see how your character will look. The bigger hips and the bigger thigh is a female character. Well, so it's always important to move your character around, or your sculpt. Just move it around, rotate it to get a good look from every angle while you're sculpting. That is very important. Most people fail to do that. The lack of not doing that. Now, when you don't do that when you're sculpting, your sculpt will end up looking very bad. So try as much as possible to make use of your rotation. And one other thing to pay attention to is while I'm sculpting, my perspective is not turned on, so I prefer to turn it off while I'm sculpting. When perspective is turned on, it looks different. So I decided to turn it off so that when I go to the side view or the front view, I can see it more because I'm moving my mesh around. So just bear in mind that your sculpt will always look terrible from the beginning. It's very, very, very necessary that your sculpt will look terrible from the beginning, but never give up on your sculpt. Still keep going on. You can always mess with the shape to get something out. So right now we're going to be blocking out the head, so just reduce the multi-resolution and let's use this for the brain part. So you should make use of reference. Make good use of reference. Very necessary. Now we're going to add the sphere, and let's reduce the parameter down to 2. And now we'll shape this for the face. I love to do it this way when blocking out characters because it actually saves time and it gives me the freedom to be able to adjust these shapes, these primitive shapes, and go for whatever I want later on. You can actually create nice base meshes from this method. Either a creature you want to sculpt, or a full character, or maybe an asset, you can actually use this method. All you have to understand is the basic shape and proportion in anatomy. It is very good you have strong knowledge of anatomy when blocking out characters, because that will help you to know the basic proportions, like how long the leg is or how short the torso is when creating characters, because without that the characters may look stylized when you're going for something realistic. So this is why it's important to look from a side rather than looking from a side. You see right the front right here. I had to rotate to the front to see what is at the front view. So it's important to look from all sides. Okay. In case this video is a little bit fast for you, you can always slow it down. So that you'll be able to watch every single step that I go through when blocking out this character. So now we've gotten exactly what we want. So right now, just move around. So now we are going to block out the neck. So we'll be using a cylinder to block out the neck. So I want first of all turn on my wire frame right here at the bottom, then reduce the constant density. Let's set it to 30. And let's validate. Then move it down, scale it, and scale it along the top to increase the length. Then let's scale it down. Let's rotate it a little bit. So one thing that you need to pay attention to is that the head is never straight. The head is never straight. So mostly the neck. So you want to pay attention to that. Very important. You want to pay attention to that when blocking out the neck. So right now, just want to push this rib cage up. So push this part up a little bit. Okay, that is nice. Now, as you all can see, our blockout is already looking like a male character with the small pelvis and the big rib cage. It's already looking like a male character. So always have that in mind. Now let's increase this a little bit so it can fit in at the top. Now let's block out the quads. It's made up of 3 visible muscles. The 3 visible muscles are called the vastus medialis, the vastus lateralis, and the rectus femoris. These 3 muscles are located at the quad, at the thigh. So that's why it's actually called the quad. So those muscles are mostly visible on bodybuilders and really muscular individuals. But I won't be adding them because the reason for that is because we are blocking out the character more on a base mesh, not a final sculpt. So we won't be adding that. We just give it a simple quad. So let's scale it down a little bit. Then let's use our move brush to move this part up. So let's just keep on going on with the sculpt. So I'll just keep on shaping this. I want this part to fit into the pelvis. So that's exactly what I want. So, well, I think I will adjust this, then scale it down a little bit because I want it to fit in and look much better. So right here, I'll use my crease brush to crease in this back part right here. But later on, we'll be adding other muscles at the back, but let me just keep it simple. Keeping it simple is a lot much better than going quick and starting to do the whole sculpt. So let's block out the deltoid. Now the deltoid, the basic shape of the deltoid is a cone. It's a cone shape, but more flattened. So I will just scale it along the top and scale it down along the top a little bit. Now let's reduce the constant density. Let's set it to 39 and let's validate that. And let's go to our move brush and just move this aside. Let's move this part to the back. Let's move it to the back. Sometimes you find that when you're sculpting, your mesh is easy to focus on. So the reason for that is because your your mesh, the one you're working on, you have not focused on it. So to solve that, what you have to do is just double tap on the mesh, then it locks and focuses on it. So let's just keep on shaping this using the move brush, just moving it around. And as you can see, my move brush is set to a low intensity so that I can be able to have more control over the brush and over the mesh. Now the deltoid is one of the muscles that helps the arm in movement. It helps the arm in movement. Now the deltoid, the front part of the deltoid attached to the bicep, middle of the bicep and the tricep, where you have the brachialis muscle. But while we move on, we will talk about that more. So I just want to get the shape of the deltoid before moving on into sculpting the bicep. When sculpting, you need to pay attention to the kind of character you want to create. Yes, that is important. Mostly at the areas of the arms. If you have a concept that you're following when sculpting, you should definitely pay attention to the reference or the concept and see how big or how small the arms is, because that will help it look exactly like the reference, which is very important when you're sculpting or creating the base mesh of the character. So I prefer to just sculpt on one, then going over to mirror it over to the other side. I prefer to do that first of all, rather than just mirroring the two over and doing it at the same time. The reason why is I just want to adjust this one first before going over and mirroring it. That's why I had to leave the leg like that for now without mirroring it over, because I'm not done with the sculpt. I'm not done with the leg and the shape, the overall shape of the leg. So now let's block out the pectoral muscles. So I'll be using a sphere, rotating it a little bit, then scaling it down and scaling it along top to make it flat. Then we'll be using it to sculpt the pectoral muscle. The pectoral muscle, if you don't know, is the chest muscle. Yeah, the chest muscle. So that is the pectoral muscle. So we call this the pectoralis major, the pectoralis muscle. So if we were creating a female character, if we were blocking out a female character, we won't be adding the chest, but instead we'll be adding the breast. That will be what we will be adding if we were creating a female character, and the whole sculpting process would have been different from this. But because we are working on a male character, so we'll be using a sphere and scaling it down, then shaping it for the pectoral muscle, which is the chest. Now, also depends on the reference that you are working with or the concept that you're going for. Every character has its own, body forms. The forms are different. Some has a different shape of the pectoral muscle, and others have, a more rounded shape. And some others, the chest, which is the pectoral muscle, are more outward. So you should pay attention to that. You can also see that on skinny people who do body workout. Their chest is much more, flat than a very big and muscular, person. So let's move this a little bit. Now, I don't want it to go below the rib cage, because at that line at the top right there, the middle of the rib cage, that is where we will be adding the muscle which divides the rib cage from the belly. So yeah, we'll be adding that muscle when doing the detailed sculpting. Alright, let's add a sphere to block out the trapezius. Let's rotate it. And let's move it to the back. Then let's scale it. Let's scale it flat. So now we'll be using this to block out the trapezius. Now the trapezius is always there. It's one of the muscles that it's there in the female and the male character. The trapezius is always there. So yeah, but when it changes forms is when you are working on a more muscular character like the hawk. The trapezius is more bigger, or you're working on a creature that has more of a different anatomy structure, maybe realistic, but just a bigger body parts, maybe the bigger torso. So that is when your whole form changes, and you have to make your trapezius really big, or so yeah. So I'll just push this around, and right now I'm kind of finding it difficult to work with the sphere, but don't worry, we will remesh this sphere so that we'll be able to have more control over the sphere to block out the trapezius more easily. So I'll just use my clay brush to add mesh all over that area, and just add all over this part too. Then let's add a sphere, and now this we'll be using it for the inner part. The other part of the trapezius. So I really don't want to make the whole complete trapezius from just a single sphere. So what I would do is I will use this sphere, then shape it and merge it with the trapezius, the one we sculpted before, from there, and shape it into the way we want it to be. It's very important that we keep our mesh on a very low poly count. Okay, so right now the neck is very short, so I'm just going to click on the head. Yes, I'm going to click on the head. Then what I want to do is I want to rename the head and the brain part. I just want to rename that. So after renaming it, I'm just going to click on the both of the heads, then move it up a little bit so that I can have more space to work on the neck, because right now the character is looking like there is no neck for it. So that is exactly what I want to do right now. Let's just give it, yes, that's perfect. All right, we are going to adjust the trapezius more and make it look much better. All right, let's move this part up a little bit. Let's move this part like this, and let's move here to the back a little bit. Let's move it downward, and let's drag this part upward. Let's move this part back a little bit. And let's just use our smooth brush to smooth everything out. So let's use our crease brush. Let's set it to a lower intensity. Then let's just crease out this middle, because the trapezius, it's not just flat, as you can see at the reference right here. So we'll just crease out this part at the middle to create this part that goes inward, that gives way for the spine, because the spine is right there at the back, but it's not visible. So we're going to be adding this sphere. I'll reduce the multi-resolution, but we'll be using this to sculpt this other muscle around the back, close to the deltoid at the back. So we'll be using this sphere to sculpt that muscle. So I'll be using my move brush to just move it. Okay, that looks good. So let me mirror it over. Now we've mirrored it over to the other side. Now let's move it a little bit. We have gotten this, but for the pectoral, the trapezius, I will be adjusting that. So first of all, I want to subdivide this twice, then use our flatten brush to flatten out this area, to flatten it out before remeshing. So I'll be remeshing it but I'll just flatten it out first of all before remeshing. So yeah, let's move this part to the back. Let's move it to the front a little bit, and let's move this one to the back right here. We want the bolts to blend together, but the reason why is because they are not two different muscles, they are one muscle, so we don't want them to be separated. So we want to make them together. So yeah, we will be doing that. So I'll just use my flatten brush to flatten out this whole part right here. Yeah, I'll just flatten those part out. Now we have something like this. Yes. Okay, that looks good. So let's sculpt the bicep. Now the bicep is one of the muscle of the arms, and that muscle is very visible. So it's very important we sculpt that, and we'll be using the sphere. So just want to scale it down and increase the length a little bit. I think we need to reduce the post subdivision of this sphere so we can have more control. So just want to reduce the post subdivision and go over to constant density and turn it to 28. I think that's okay, and let's validate that. So right now we'll be using this to shape the bicep. So using my move brush, I just want to move this whole part to cover the back. Now when some people sculpt the bicep, they sculpt it too close to the rib cage. Well, if you pay attention to your bicep, your arms, when it joins with the deltoid and the shoulder, you can see that you have space underneath it where it gives space for the armpit. So we really don't want that to happen. If we were to animate this character, we want to make sure that we have such space so that the arms can move freely. So, well, for the sake of blockout, we'll just do that. So right now I'll be using my crease brush to crease out this part to make that crease right there. So along this back area, I'll just use my crease brush to cut this whole area right here, and use my flatten brush to flatten this out. Along this back part, we have the tricep. Now the tricep muscle, with the name tricep, you can already know that they are made up of three muscles. Now those three muscles, two of them are along the back part of the arms, and they are mostly visible when you flex the arms. Like you take it backwards, that is when you see those muscles visible. Now the third head of the tricep is not that visible because it's located under the arms right there. So the third head of the tricep is there, but it's not so visible, only on muscular people. So I'll be adding this sphere. I want to use it to block out the biceps. Then for the tricep, I'll be using the sphere we already shaped for the tricep. The reason for that is so that I can really place the deltoid in the middle of the tricep and the bicep. Now, if you don't know, in the middle of the tricep and the bicep, we also have another muscle, and that muscle is called the brachialis muscle. Now, that's the name of the muscle. it's located right there at the middle of the tricep and the bicep, but we won't be adding the muscle. When we are doing the detailed sculpting, we'll definitely be adding the brachialis muscle. So right now we just sculpt this to go inwards into the bicep and the tricep. So let's mirror this over, and now we have this, which looks good. Now the arms are big. Well, that's the way I want it to be. If I wanted smaller arms for the character, I'll definitely go for that. So for the head, let's move it a little bit. So let's scale it down. I found out that the head was kind of big, so let's scale it down a little bit. Then let's move it down a little bit. So the neck, I will be moving the neck upward so it fits on the head. So it fits into the head. So now, as you can see, we already have a character looking like a male character with the whole body, the whole body muscle. So right now, the neck, I totally didn't forget that. We work on this. So now let's go to our gizmo and let's scale it up to increase the size. I hope you learned something from this video. Well, if you did, then let me know in the comments down below, because in the second part of this video we will go further and complete this character before moving on into adding details and creating the complete character. Make sure to check out my channel for more awesome character sculpt and art related video. If this video was helpful to you, then make sure to like, subscribe and share this video, and I'll see you guys in the next one.